The next item is the roundtable member withdrawals from the RMMA, CNR, and the possible termination of the IGA. So I'll start. Broomfield, just this last week, we sent notice that we are going to be, the city and county of Broomfield is going to be withdrawing from the CNR. This was a conversation that we had last month that it seemed like we were at kind of a decision point. Wanted to make sure each community had that conversation. And so wanted to put it on the agenda tonight just to kind of get an idea of where things are going. And I think that this ties in with our future agenda is where are we going as a CNR? So wanted to make sure that we have that conversation tonight. I don't know if there are any other members that are withdrawing or have stated notice for the withdrawal of the CNR at this point.
Can you go over the regulations in what is in the IGA in terms of withdrawal and in terms of possible termination of the IGA? What does the IGA say?
I can, it'll just take me a minute to pull it up.
Just three members have to.
Sure, I can find it.
I think everybody needs to be on the same plate and know what.
My understanding is any member can withdraw by giving written notice. They can withdraw within 30 days.
Within 30 days?
Their withdrawals at 30 days, they have.
I think they give 30 days notice, but let's let Devin go through the IGA.
I think since we both read it and asking Devin to read it on the spot and talk about it is sort of silly. So do we want to take a recess so everyone can read the IGA?
First of all, the first question was, who wrote the IGA? And I believe that it was Jefferson County, correct me if I'm wrong, that drafted that, or the airport that drafted that?
The Jefferson County Attorney's Office drafted the language of the IGA. It was reviewed by staff from each of your jurisdictions before being voted on.
And then ultimately voted on. Okay, thank you. The next part was the member withdraw, and I believe that that's up there right now. Ben, maybe you can read it since you're a little bit closer.
You want the whole thing?
Well, just the section on withdraw.
All right. Any member may withdraw from the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable by giving 30 days written notice to the chairman of the roundtable and the RMMA airport of its intent to withdraw. Such withdrawing member shall pay all of its obligations arising hereunder or pursuant to the bylaws until the effective date of its withdrawal. Provided, however, that if a member determines to withdraw from the roundtable after October 31st, the then current calendar year, the withdrawing member shall be required to pay the full amount of the member's annual dues for the ensuing year. As of the effective date of withdrawal, the withdrawing member shall lose all rights and benefits under this agreement. A withdrawing member shall have no obligation, financial or otherwise, to the roundtable following the effective date of its withdrawal, except as otherwise provided herein, and except that if such withdrawing member is bound by any ongoing, long-term, or other obligation in its capacity as a member of the roundtable, that cannot be completed by the effective date of withdrawal. Such withdrawing member shall be bound by the terms of that obligation and shall provide, therefore, until such obligation has been discharged. A withdrawing member acknowledges and agrees it may still be required to review and respond to proposed changes in airport policies or procedures prior to FAA review, regardless of the status of its membership in the roundtable.
Excellent, thank you. And if you'll go to the section on termination, since that was our second question.
This agreement may be terminated by approval of a majority of the members to the agreement, as such agreement is amended from time to time, provided, however, that this agreement may not be terminated so long as the roundtable has obligations outstanding unless provision for full payment of such obligations has been made pursuant to the terms thereof. Liquid assets of the roundtable remaining after satisfaction of all obligations of the roundtable shall be equitably distributed to the members as deemed fair and appropriate by the board. In addition, this agreement shall automatically terminate in the event there are 4 members or fewer to this agreement, whether by voluntary withdrawal from the roundtable or termination as a result of a default as described in Section 5 of Article 2 above.
Great, thank you very much. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Kraft-Tharp?
Yeah, I just felt like since we're talking about something that pertains to the IGA, we all should be clear around what is in the IGA. So thank you as chair for going through that.
No problem. All right, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a question, just if everybody's going, so since termination is one of the topics of discussion, I wondered if everyone's going to be able to vote on termination if they had a chance to take a position on that tonight, because normally if someone was abstaining, it would have the effect of not affecting the outcome. But I think the way that this IGA is written, as Commissioner Kraft-Tharp has pointed out, an abstained vote would have the effect of a no vote. Because it's about a majority of members, not a majority of members present and voting. And so I want to understand if everybody's able to vote this evening, because if they're not able to vote and they abstain, it has the same effect as a no vote, which is different than abstaining. So that's why I would like to know if everyone's able to vote tonight.
Looks like we have some members that aren't able to vote tonight.
Louisville has not had an opportunity to discuss it in a public meeting at full council, and so I would not be able to vote. I would be abstaining.
Superior hasn't also, we're going to talk about this on Monday, so if we are to vote tonight, I will abstain.
Okay.
And so just my concern with taking a vote with two people abstaining is that those are essentially no votes toward a majority. And so I think we should postpone voting until all the members can vote. That's just my opinion. Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate that this is on the agenda. Boulder County is going to submit a letter to withdraw. I do think we should delay the vote tonight so we can have a full discussion and deliberation. But when I look at the IGA, which if you notice in the original IGA that formed this, I'm one of the mayors that signed it. My community advocated for and wanted to have this forum and work towards solutions together. And at the time, I believed that was the right thing. And we've worked together to look and see, are there mutually agreeable solutions through VFR routes to address the noise impacts. And I think we've given it a very good effort and identified that there are not mutually agreeable solutions, that the impacts necessarily push noise from one area to another, and there will be an outstanding member that will not support the routes being concentrated over their area. So I think we've given good effort and energy to the purpose at hand. And when I look at the purposes laid out in our intergovernmental agreement, it states that we'll identify the dimension of noise issues, possible mitigation actions, and find opportunities for implementation to mitigate measures. We'll share up-to-date data in order to identify potential voluntary noise reduction opportunities. We'll identify operational changes to the airport that would require federal approval. We'll build consensus around recommendations for noise measures, whether voluntary or mandatory. We'll review available data regarding noise reduction measures, and we'll review airport development plans and operational changes and surrounding community development plans for the associated noise impacts. And that last item, I feel we are being used as a pawn as one of the members where the airport has made development plan changes, for example, with removal of the taxiway, and not had them reviewed by this board for the noise impacts. And when that was brought to the commissioner's attention, the staff and Commissioner Kraft-Tharp said that it was in fact brought to us for approval. And I wholeheartedly disagree, and I'm happy to show the minutes that we didn't approve it or review it for noise. There was an update on the taxiway, but to use this board to state that our communities are approving of these operational changes, I think is disingenuous and very frustrating to our community because we didn't have a chance to weigh in. And the request of our community was simply to be able to have this board review the noise impacts from those types of operational changes as we've agreed to through the IGA. So I think we have really worked hard together to see if there are mutually beneficial and acceptable solutions and identified that there are not. So rather than continue to waste the community's time and have our presence here be used and weaponized against our community with regard to operational changes at the airport, we will withdraw.
So what have we done? We discussed land use and came up with best practices. We did come up with review the strategic plan for the airport, and no, there's not approval, but there was a discussion, and that's in the September 2021 minutes that you can certainly take a look at. But you're right, there was no approval, but the IGA also does not say that there needs to be approval. There was a discussion around the noise implications. We did a beta testing where we changed the route, and that was not successful. But why was it not successful? Because there were more complaints. We could have shoved that through as a noise roundtable. We could have. We did not because there was an increase in noise. We reviewed Trustee Serbo's proposal around nighttime changes, and that has been successful. What is successful? It goes back to, I think, what you're saying. There seems to be an expectation airport noise roundtable, airport noise will go away. But that's unrealistic. This airport works with the FAA. The FAA has authority over everything in the airspace. The CNR has been a source of information for me that I continue to learn every meeting. What are the things we are able to do? What are the things we're not able to do? One of the things that we are able to do is we are able to look at the egress until last month. Why should this CNR not disband? I'm totally 100% baffled. I'm not understanding what people think is going to happen. The FAA asked us to do the CNR. It's the mechanism that they want, not only with us, but that they have asked with 19,000 general aviation airports, that they want within the structure to be able to pull together impacted communities, be able to work together, be able to come through some consensus. So the second is, where do citizens go? So we end this, obviously not tonight, you're suggesting now we do it next month. So after May, what's next month? May 3rd, May 4th? Where do people go on May 5th? Where do people go on May 6th? Because you could come here, we're not gonna be here. We're going to be gone. You could go to your Boulder County Commissioners meeting, you could go to your Westminster, or your city council meetings. But there's nothing that they can do. There's nothing that they can do. At least this forum has the possibility. Centennial's been meeting for 20 years, and I know your counselor thinks Centennial hasn't gotten anything done. I listen to it because I want to see, and I listen to other noise roundtables around the country, because I want to see what the possibility is of what we can do. And Centennial's been meeting for 20 years. It's part of their structure. There was not the expectation that we have a problem, going to fix that solution this week, and it's all going to be done. The expectation is that this is part of the solution of the infrastructure that we will, whether it's not going to be me, but people from our communities will be meeting long-term as new issues come up.
Commissioner Kraft-Tharp, you mentioned some of the things we've done, right? And we definitely discussed that and we took that into consideration. So the land use was a good conversation about what has been done, you know, what development around the airport has been done, how we can better do land use later in you know, future years concerning around the proximity of the airports. Strategic plan, again, that was a conversation, but really it didn't amount to anything here. The beta test wasn't continued because no one applied, you know, no one did it. You know, none of the flight schools adhered to it. The tracks maintain the same routes that they've done before. No one adhered to any of that beta test, so it didn't matter. And then the last thing, which is the nighttime changes, again, that was done outside of the CNR. CNR had that back here for approval because the CNR was in place, but all of that work and all that conversation existed outside of the CNR. So, you know, when we talk about things that have been done, it's, again, as I stated, no meaningful changes, no meaningful work has been accomplished in the CNR. And I think that, you know, so Commissioner Kraft-Tharp and I had a meeting with the FAA representatives. This was in March 4th, just so everybody knows. At that meeting, I said to the FAA, you told us to do a CNR. And they said, we did not tell you to do a CNR. Right?
Yeah, but put it in the context of the conversation.
They did not tell us to do a CNR. And I said, so if you did not tell us, it was one of the options, right? It was one of the options. I said, so if there were other options, what were the other options that we could pursue to have meaningful action? They said your congressional representatives, and you could form a working group. And I said, well, under our current IGA, we cannot have a non-public subcommittee. Down at Centennial, they have a non-public subcommittee where they have representatives of the CNR and airport pilots, airport staff that meet without the public in attendance. And then they bring those reports back to the CNR. We cannot do that. We cannot have a subcommittee meet non-publicly. So I said, that option isn't available. I said, so what other options do we have? That's it. Those are our options. And so I said, at this point, I'm not quite sure what you expect. Because the FAA is not going to come to our CNR meetings and have open dialogue. They're not going to do that. They've already told us no. We don't even have John Bauer here anymore because he's been reassigned to a different assignment. That's true. He's not here because he's on a different assignment. So at this point, we have congressional, we have the CNR, and we have a working group. So we need to find a pathway forward. If it's the CNR, then you all can continue to do this. But Broomfield is not going to. We have sent our 30 days notice in, and we are not going to continue with the CNR.
You said that we couldn't do a work group because of our IGA. Couldn't our IGA be amended to allow a work group?
You could.
And the other thing you said.
You would have to have 100%, you'd have to have unanimous consent.
And that's fine. I just want to
Okay,
understand the path, because obviously somebody else did it.
Mhm.
So it seems to me that if that's something that we would want, that potential. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
wait out your comments before I say mine. And then the other thing I just want to make sure, because this is my understanding, I want to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting what I heard. Even though trustee Serbo's work was outside of the CNR, without CNR, it wouldn't have happened because FAA wouldn't have allowed it, because this group had to unanimously say we want to try that. And I'm not wrong.
That's correct.
So, I mean,
Can I respond to
yeah,
that?
sure.
So I think that what we heard is that because the CNR was in place, they wanted us to approve it.
Correct.
But however, all of that work only existed on the airport property. It didn't affect any surrounding jurisdictions.
And I think that's fair. I just think that both sides of it are fair.
Right.
In my perspective
Yeah.
of it.
And why we're withdrawing is that this seems counterproductive to chasing positive outcomes. And it has felt like a moving target. So last meeting, we heard comments from Jefferson County that if we wanted to do a Part 150, that we had to have this group. And I said, that's not the case. Airports have done Part 150s without noise roundtables. And they said, no, we're gonna delay our vote, even though we've been making a commitment for months and months and months to do a 150. We're gonna pause our vote, we're gonna hold it up. Then we come back tonight and we find out, yes, in fact, an airport can do a Part 150 without a noise roundtable. And then tonight we hear, well, there'll be no public forum if we get rid of the roundtable. There are several public forums that I think are more appropriate for a lot of the comments that are coming forward, because they're to people that could take action to have a meaningful impact. So people could make comments at the Jefferson County Commissioners meeting. People could make comments at the Airport Advisory Board meeting, particularly if they're about taxiway design or investment in the airport, or about how operations are paid for and maintained and other things like that, that really aren't appropriate for the roundtable. So they would have a lot of opportunity to make comment to the people that actually have an ability to impact and affect the change in this area. And so I wouldn't want to just create a vacuum where people don't have a place to go and a voice. But there are several forums that exist where people can make public comment that I think it would be efficient and effective. And people can talk to their councils and stuff still too. So I think that's great. There have been a number of comments about what the FAA thinks. I keep wondering if the FAA wants to come make comments for themselves. But I've been meeting with the FAA over time. There were comments made throughout the meeting that the FAA won't meet with people without a roundtable. And that's just not my experience of what they've said to me. They do community presentations. Are there a lot of rules they have to follow? Like, are they gonna do it in front of the news camera or in a big public forum like that, with TVs and stuff there? No. But would they meet with community members, and have they been meeting with community members? Yes. Like, do they consider different suggestions and input? Yes. Like, do they want to educate and inform about their positions on things to community members? Yes. So I think my perception from talking with the FAA is that some of the statements that have been made about the FAA's position just don't mesh with my experiences of talking to the FAA. So I keep wondering if they want to speak for themselves in the meeting, but maybe they do, maybe they don't. So I also heard several times that people are saying the board has done nothing. I was careful trying to not convey that. I think the board has attempted to see if there was consensus in an area to make VFR routes. And we've studied things together and found that there's not. Like, so that's not the same as saying we've done nothing. Like, we've looked into something, we've worked on things. We got back some voluntary noise abatement procedures that Jefferson County had previously removed. The ones from in the early 2010s and late 2009s are still not back, but there are things that were done. I just don't think that it is a good use of community resources any further. And in fact, it is being used against our community and not working toward chasing avenues to working together. So I just find that there are better paths to pursue that.
The other thing that I've heard here is a taxiway removal. Would you enlighten me on
So
what
And I just was wondering if you said I was saying the thing about the strategic business plan, because I was talking about the taxiway removal.
Okay, so which taxiway removal are you talking about?
Pull up my email from a few months ago when the commissioners voted on removing a taxiway.
Okay, so I think what you're talking about, you mentioned that, I think that's, the removal of runway 2-1, right?
321.
Yeah, 321,
It'll just take me a minute to pull it.
yeah, the crosswind runway, and the removal of that runway, is for a number of things, but mostly it's because it cannot be maintained without a big time significant investment. That doesn't, it has very, very few operations and only in very select conditions. And it doesn't warrant the investment that it would take to rebuild that runway that is at the end of its life. There was really no noise issue to it. And in fact, the reality is that the current design of runways wouldn't allow that runway to be built there now anyway, because of some triangle clearance issues at the end, as well as the approach off the end of the runway over Broomfield. And the removal of that can only be, it only would improve the noise situation, not make it worse. There's nothing about that potentially makes noise worse.
I disagree, and we didn't have a chance to weigh in. I mean, so it is going to change things, and we didn't have a chance to weigh in. And all I asked was for an opportunity to discuss it. I didn't ask for anything more than that.
Okay, but I guess respectfully, where I would disagree with you is that that's an airport operational issue as far as an operation of the pavement of the runways. That wasn't an issue of development of resources at the airport to move traffic around. And so I think it gets back to the expectations, and that the expectation is that a community noise roundtable is here to regulate any potential development or growth at the airport. I think is a complete misnomer.
And that's not what I'm saying. So that's why I specifically read what our IGA agreed to, that we would review airport development plans, operational changes, and surrounding community development plans for associated noise impacts. Like, that's what we've agreed to do, and we've not done that on that particular example for one, and others, but that's for one.
Respectfully, I think that's a nitpicky argument to say that the roundtable didn't weigh in on the removal of a runway that was going to be essentially removed by being closed the minute it's unsafe to use. And removal or closing is exactly the same thing from operations of aircraft, and it has nothing to do with the community noise roundtable. The runway will not be able to be open the minute it's unsafe. And whether it's still there or not, then there's no difference.
I've never been so respectfully called nitpicky. I appreciate that. And just for me, that's just an example that I've used that, you know, there are impacts to our community all the time from actions that Jefferson County is choosing to take that we don't have any say in. And so when I keep hearing this is the forum, this is where we'll have consensus, this is where we're going to study things, this is where we're going to all agree, and that time after time keeps not happening, and changes continue to be made without us having an opportunity to weigh in, our voices be heard, it makes it seem like this is not a good use of our time. And then when in the hearing, when that's being discussed, we get told that we did get to weigh in on it, that feels even worse.
So I'm pretty new to this roundtable, so I'm, just trying to take it all in, I'll say, and trying to get up to speed quickly. The one thing I'll say that I feel like is glaring to me as a frustration, specifically for our community, but I think for probably the core of this board, is we're being tasked with coming up with recommendations, but then at the same time, we're saying, you really don't have any input on operations. There's all of those recommendations around operations from the ABC X2 study, right? I don't know all of them exactly, but curfews, landing fees, things that would significantly impact noise in our communities and would have negative impacts to this airport economically, without a doubt, right? Those are not things that we can really discuss. So the material pieces that would really drive some solutions on noise, and trying to find that balance between, I get it, we want to have as many trained great pilots as we can, but also not having as much noise impact to our communities as we do currently. How can we actually have that when we're being told operational things like that? No way, off the table, right? So to me, that's like the really crux of the matter, that yes, we can come and try to have these conversations and have recommendations, but we really can't talk about the stuff that's really gonna make change. So maybe I'm not fully understanding what we can and what we cannot do, but that is what I'm hearing, that we're just the voice to listen to the community and maybe bring some recommendations, but they can't be really material recommendations. So I will say from my community, you know, I think if there's gonna be a table where we can have our voice on this matter, we wanna have our voice heard on this matter. But we also feel like, what are we doing here? And maybe it's time to move on. So if we did have a vote today, I would be voting to terminate the roundtable, but we have not decided officially to withdraw. Because like I said, if there's a table where our voice can be heard, we would like our voice to be heard.
Any other comments?
Yeah, not understanding politics, then if Boulder County is gonna leave, why don't they leave then? Why stay around for a vote? I'm not understanding your.
Because I thought we might all decide together that we had done this, we studied what we set out to study, and all collectively agree that we wanted to end it. Like, we're just trying to be present for the conversation on whether we want to end this and share the perspective of the community members in Boulder County on how it's going. I think I offer a unique perspective. That's.
I'm just curious. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your clarification.
Can I ask one other question? You had several times stated the disappointment and discontent with not being able to weigh in, you know, substantially on that, on the runway removal. So if this group goes away, I mean, you mentioned other places that do exist today that people could go talk to today. So how does that help that effort to be able to speak on that? Because that didn't happen in that instance. Like, so if that comes up again or something like that comes up again, you know, where do you go with it?
So I sent a letter to the Jefferson County Commissioners with my feedback on that. I thought they should table that so we could weigh in. If we didn't have a group, then we would have sent our comments and position to the Airport Advisory Board and to the Jefferson County Commissioners on their action and how it would affect us. And our recommendation.
Okay, and so I'm glad to know what you did. I guess the other thing is, and so I don't think I was at that meeting, but when they brought it up here, because I was told it was brought up here, and I would be happy to check the minutes if you prefer. But did you raise that here with the group? You're saying
It wasn't brought up here in the same way it was brought up at the commissioners meeting at all. And because I would think the best thing for you to do would be to watch the meeting where it was brought up here, in the context it was brought up here, and then watch the Jefferson County Commissioners.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I just,
That's what I would
you
encourage.
brought it up, so I wanted to ask your perspective because I'm trying to connect the dots.
Yeah, yes.
Like, I just want to be accurate on that runway discussion. The formal action that was taken, that runway is open today. I mean, you can ask Tower for approval to land on it if it's Tower hours, and you can land on it if the tower's closed with VFR procedure. So that runway is open. The action that the airport took, that the Airport Advisory Board weighed in on or provided advice on, was whether to use some of the capital capacity of the airport to ask for a grant from the FAA to reconstruct a runway that it's the end of its life. And the decision was made not to expend capital and move that into the capital program to reconstruct that runway. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, reconstruct that runway before its life ends. And the advice by the Airport Advisory Board, and we heard from the public and the constituents and took public comment on it, and the advice from the Airport Advisory Board to the airport was that it didn't have enough operations and that it didn't make sense within the capital structure of the airport for them to ask for a grant to rebuild that runway. So there was no discussion of, do we close this runway or do we not? That runway will close when it's no longer able to be used, because it's no longer able to be used, and there's no capital to rebuild.
Yeah, and the environmental review and documentation that was used to justify it is quite old and doesn't match current operations or other things, and doesn't use any kind of current modeling about noise. And there will definitely be potential impacts that we could have weighed in on.
All right.
Again, I disagree, but anyway.
Yeah,
fine,
we
fine.
disagree. That's fine. We could have talked about it here though, and we didn't. And then the Jefferson County Commissioners were told, we discussed it. And there was an update here that said that they were gonna do it, but we did not discuss it.
All right.
Devin, I get really quickly, for next meeting, if we're gonna dissolve, we dissolve it, but if we're, how do we have a vote or how do we talk about amending the agreement? If we're gonna do a subset conversation with FAA air traffic control, how do we have that conversation?
So that would be outside of this body, right? A member would have to initiate a change to the IGA. It would then have to be circulated amongst all the rest of the jurisdictions in order for that IGA to be approved then. Yep.
So to clarify, if I understand that right, I mean, essentially, this CNR could go away and each of us could probably go to our community and work with each other to have a new IGA that's formed in the way that we think will fit. Even if this one goes away would be my guess, because we formed this one when there wasn't anything, so.
Right, and if a IGA between 4 communities that doesn't include all the impacted communities in the Class D airspace forms, and then the other communities object, the FAA is not going to listen to the remaining members' recommendations.
Which is exactly why Westminster came back, and that's why this baffles me, because I was with you. I was the one who said, let's leave this. This is a waste of time. And then we were told, but then you can't do anything. So to me, even if
I
it's.
didn't tell you that.
The FAA and the airport told us that, so, and since I've been back, we have done something, so, I mean, that's also why I'm baffled, but.
Excellent.